The rain hammered against the windows of the modest duplex in Lekki Phase 1, Lagos, like 1,000 angry fists. Inside, Chidinma Okafor stood trembling in the living room, her 3-month-old daughter, Adana, wailing in her arms. Her husband, Obinna, towered over her, his face twisted with a rage she'd never seen before. "Get out," he hissed, his voice cold as death. "Get out of my house. Now." "Obinna, please," Chidinma's voice cracked. "It's pouring outside. The baby. The baby." He laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. "Is she even mine, Chidinma? Tell me the truth." Thunder cracked overhead, and little Adana's cries grew louder. Chidinma's mother-in-law, Mama Neka, emerged from the guest room, her wrapper tied tightly around her waist, her face set in stone. "My son is right," the older woman said, her voice dripping with contempt. "A woman like you has no place in this family. We should have known better than to accept someone with your background." Chidinma's heart shattered. 3 hours ago, everything had been perfect. They'd been celebrating Adana's christening with close family and friends. Then Obinna's phone had pinged with a message, a series of photos from an unknown number. Photos from 7 years ago. Photos of a younger Chidinma in a dimly lit bar, serving drinks in a tight uniform, smiling at male customers. Photos that told a story Chidinma had buried deep, praying it would never resurface. She'd worked as a waitress to put herself through university after her parents died in a car accident. She'd done nothing shameful, nothing immoral. But in Obinna's eyes, and especially in his mother's, those images painted her as something filthy, something unworthy of the Okafor name. "Obinna, you know me," Chidinma pleaded, tears streaming down her face. "I've been faithful to you. I've been a good wife. Those photos, I was just working to survive. I told you I had to work my way through school. You told me you worked in a library." Obinna roared. "Not in some cheap bar, serving God knows who. What else have you been hiding?" "Nothing. I swear on Adana's life. Don't you dare bring my daughter's name into your lies." He grabbed her arm, his fingers digging into her flesh. "I said get out. If you're not gone in 5 minutes, I'll throw you out myself." Mama Neka crossed her arms, satisfaction gleaming in her eyes. Perhaps this is God's way of revealing the truth. A woman from nowhere, with no family, no pedigree. What did you expect, my son? Chidinma looked around desperately. Where was Obinna's sister, Amora, who had always been kind to her? Where was Pastor Emeka, who had just blessed Adana at the church that afternoon? But the house was silent except for the storm and her baby's cries. With shaking hands, Chidinma gathered a few baby items, diapers, a blanket, a bottle. Obinna watched her coldly, his jaw clenched. When she reached for her phone charger, he snatched it from her hand. "You take nothing that I bought," he said. "Nothing. Obinna, please. Just let me stay until morning. Look at the weather." He grabbed her shoulder and shoved her toward the door. Chidinma stumbled, clutching Adana tighter. The baby's cries turned to frightened hiccups. "Out. Now." The door flew open, and the storm rushed in, wind, rain, and darkness. Chidinma stood at the threshold, looking back one last time at the man she'd loved, the man she'd married just 2 years ago in a beautiful ceremony at the Redeemed Christian Church in Victoria Island. "Obinna, I love you." He slammed the door in her face. The rain soaked through Chidinma's lace blouse within seconds. She wrapped the blanket tighter around Adana and stumbled down the driveway, her slippers sliding on the wet concrete. The security guard, Johnson, watched from his post but said nothing. He'd seen everything. He'd heard everything. But he was paid by the Okafors. Chidinma made it to the main road, her vision blurred by rain and tears. Cars sped past, splashing dirty water onto her wrapper. She had nowhere to go. Her best friend, Ngozi, lived all the way in Suralere, at least an hour away, and she had no money for a taxi or even Okada. Her bank card was inside, in her purse. Her phone was down to 3% battery. She ducked under the awning of a closed pharmacy, trying to shield Adana from the worst of the storm. The baby had finally quieted, her tiny face peaceful against Chidinma's chest, oblivious to the disaster unfolding around them. "I'm so sorry, my love," Chidinma whispered, kissing Adana's forehead. "Mama will protect you. I promise." But even as she said the words, despair crept into her heart. How would she survive? Where would they sleep? What kind of future could she give her daughter now? Then, through the rain, she saw headlights approaching. A sleek black SUV slowed down, pulling up to the curb beside her. The passenger window rolled down, revealing a woman in her 60s, elegant even in the dim light, her hair wrapped in an expensive gele. "My dear," the woman called out in Yoruba-accented English, "what are you doing out here in this storm with a baby?" Chidinma couldn't speak. She could only stare. The woman's driver, a tall man in a crisp white shirt, stepped out with an umbrella and approached. "Madam says you should come into the car," he said gently. "It's not safe out here." Chidinma hesitated. Mama Necker's warnings about strangers echoed in her mind. But what choice did she have? She nodded and allowed the driver to guide her into the warm, dry interior of the SUV. The elegant woman studied her with kind but penetrating eyes. "What's your name, child?" "Chidinma, Ma." "Chidinma Okafor." The woman's expression shifted, surprise, recognition, something Chidinma couldn't quite read. "Okafor," the woman repeated softly. "And your husband's name?" "Obinna Okafor, Ma." The woman sat back, a strange smile playing on her lips. "Is that so? What would you do if your past was exposed in front of everyone? Hit like if you've ever been judged unfairly, and comment where you're watching from." But right now, Chidinma had no idea that the woman sitting beside her was about to change her life forever. Or that Obinna's cruelty tonight would cost him everything. The SUV glided through the rain-soaked streets of Lagos, its leather seats a stark contrast to the cold, wet nightmare Chidinma had just escaped. She cradled Adana close, her body still trembling from shock and cold. The elegant woman beside her remained silent, studying Chidinma with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. Finally, the woman spoke. "My name is Chief Mrs. Adebayo. Adesewa Adebayo. I'm taking you to my home in Ikoyi. You and your baby need warmth, food, and rest." "Thank you, Ma," Chidinma whispered. "But I don't want to be a burden. If you could just drop me at a hotel." "With what money?" Mrs. Adebayo asked pointedly but not unkindly. "Child, I've lived long enough to recognize a woman in crisis. You stay with me tonight. Tomorrow, we'll talk." Chidinma's pride warred with her desperation. Pride lost. 20 minutes later, they pulled up to a magnificent mansion in Old Ikoyi, its gates opening automatically. Even in her distress, Chidinma couldn't help but marvel at the grandeur, the manicured gardens, the fountain, the colonial-style architecture with modern touches. This was wealth beyond anything the Okafors had ever known. Inside, Mrs. Adebayo's housemaid, a kind-faced woman named Patience, immediately took charge. "Oh, see this small pikin in the rain. Madam, bring her to the guest room. I will warm water for bathing and prepare food." Within an hour, Chidinma had bathed, changed into a soft nightgown that smelled of lavender, and fed Adana. The baby slept peacefully in a borrowed crib, her tiny chest rising and falling steadily. Chidinma sat in the elegant guest room, a cup of hot pepper soup in her hands, still unable to believe she was safe. A knock came at the door. Mrs. Adebayo entered, now dressed in a simple but expensive kaftan, her face free of makeup, revealing a beautiful woman who'd aged with grace. "How are you feeling?" she asked, settling into the chair opposite Chidinma. "Better, Ma. Thank you." I don't know how to repay. Hush. Mrs. Adebayo waved her hand. Tell me what happened tonight. Why was a young mother with a baby out in that storm? Chidinma's throat tightened. But something about this woman's presence, her calm authority, her genuine concern, made the words spill out. She told Mrs. Adebayo everything: her parents' death, working her way through the University of Lagos, meeting Obinna at a friend's wedding, their courtship, the quick marriage, Mama Nneka's constant criticism, and finally, tonight's betrayal. Someone sent him old photos of me working as a waitress, Chidinma said, her voice breaking. Nothing shameful happened. I was just serving drinks to pay my tuition. But he said I lied to him. He said I was unworthy of his family name. His mother called me a woman from nowhere. Mrs. Adebayo's face hardened. Nneka Okafor said that. Chidinma's head snapped up. You know her? Oh, I know the Okafors very well. Mrs. Adebayo stood and walked to the window, gazing out at the now gentle rain. Tell me, Chidinma, what do you know about your husband's family? Just what Obinna told me. His father died when he was young. His mother raised him and his sister, Amora, by selling fabrics in Balegan market. They struggled but eventually built a successful import business. Obinna is an accountant at a bank in Victoria Island. Mrs. Adebayo turned back, her expression unreadable. Did he tell you anything else about his father? Only that his name was Chukwudi Okafor and that he died in a business accident when Obinna was 5. A bitter smile crossed Mrs. Adebayo's face. A business accident. Is that what Nneka told her children? Chidinma set down her soup, confused. More, what do you mean? Mrs. Adebayo returned to her seat, her movements deliberate, controlled. Chukwudi Okafor didn't die in an accident, my dear. He died of a heart attack in my bed, in my hotel room in Abuja, 28 years ago. The words hung in the air like thunder. I don't understand. Chukwudi was my lover, Mrs. Adebayo said simply. For 7 years. I was young, foolish, and married to a man I didn't love, a marriage arranged by my family for business purposes. Chukwudi was my escape, my joy. He promised to leave Nneka, to marry me properly. But he never did. And then, one night, his heart simply stopped. Chidinma felt the room spin. But why are you telling me this? Because, child, I know Nneka Okafor's character. After Chukwudi died, she blamed me. She went to my husband, caused a scandal, tried to destroy my life. But my husband and I came to an understanding. We maintained appearances and lived separate lives. I built my own empire in real estate and shipping. Nneka, meanwhile, built her small fabric business and raised her children to worship the Okafor name as if it were royalty. Mrs. Adebayo leaned forward, her eyes intense. That woman has spent decades playing the victim, acting as if she's superior to everyone else. And now she's turned her son into the same judgmental hypocrite. Throwing you out for working honestly to survive. While she herself stood by a cheating husband for years. I still don't understand why this matters to me, Chidinma said quietly. It matters because tomorrow morning, you and I are going back to that house. And Nneka Okafor is going to learn that the woman from nowhere she dismissed has friends in very high places. Chidinma's eyes widened. No, Ma. Please. I don't want to cause more trouble. I just want to figure out how to take care of my baby and move on. Move on. Mrs. Adebayo's voice rose slightly. Child, they threw you out in a storm. They endangered your baby's life. You have legal rights. More than that, you deserve justice. But Obinna believed lies over the woman he married. He chose his bitter mother over his wife. That kind of man deserves to face the consequences. Chidinma's hands trembled. Part of her wanted justice, wanted to see Obinna's face when he realized what he'd done. But another part, the part that still loved him, wanted to simply disappear and nurse her wounds in private. I need to think. Of course. Rest tonight. But tomorrow, Chidinma, you will see that sometimes destiny arrives not when we are ready, but when we are at our lowest. And that woman who threw you out? She's about to discover that she's made a very expensive mistake. Mrs. Adebayo stood to leave, then paused at the door. Oh, and Chidinma. Those photos that were sent to your husband. Do you have any idea who might have sent them? Chidinma shook her head. No, Ma. I can't think of anyone who would. Think harder. Someone wanted to destroy your marriage. Someone who knew exactly which buttons to push. Mrs. Adebayo's eyes glittered. In my experience, that kind of betrayal usually comes from very close to home. She left, closing the door softly behind her. Chidinma sat in stunned silence, her mind racing. Who would do such a thing? And then, like a lightning bolt, a memory surfaced. Last month, at a family dinner, she'd caught Obinna's cousin, Ifeoma, going through her phone. Ifeoma had laughed it off, claiming she was just checking the time. But Ifeoma had always been jealous of Chidinma, always making subtle comments about how Obinna had married down. Could Ifeoma have somehow found those old photos? Could she have sent them? Chidinma looked at her sleeping daughter and felt a fierce protectiveness rise in her chest. If someone had deliberately destroyed her marriage, if someone had put her baby in danger. Maybe Mrs. Adebayo was right. Maybe it was time to stop running and start fighting back. But as she lay down to sleep, another question haunted her. What would Obinna do when he realized the woman he'd thrown away had found a powerful ally? And more importantly, was there any part of him that regretted what he'd done? In the Okafor house in Lekki, Obinna lay awake in his bed, staring at the ceiling, his mother's satisfied snores echoing from the guest room. He'd expected to feel righteous, vindicated. Instead, all he felt was a gnawing emptiness. The bed felt too big without Chidinma. The house felt too quiet without Adana's soft breathing from the nursery. He picked up his phone and looked at the photos again. This time, he looked more carefully. Chidinma's uniform, modest, professional. Her expression, tired but determined, not flirtatious. The setting, a respectable hotel restaurant, not some seedy bar. His thumb hovered over her contact. Should he call? Should he apologize? Then his mother's words echoed in his mind. A man who cannot control his household is not a man at all. He put the phone down. But he didn't sleep. And neither did the guilt that was slowly, steadily, beginning to eat him alive. Morning came with brutal clarity. Chidinma woke to sunlight streaming through silk curtains and the sound of Adana cooing in her crib. For one blissful moment, she forgot where she was. Then memory crashed back, Obinna's rage, the storm, the locked door, her baby's cries mingling with her own. She sat up, her body aching, and lifted Adana into her arms. Good morning, my sunshine, she whispered, kissing the baby's soft cheek. Adana giggled happily, oblivious to yesterday's trauma. A knock interrupted the moment. Patience entered with a tray of breakfast, yam porridge, fried plantains, scrambled eggs, fresh orange juice. Madam Adesewa says you should eat well, Patience said warmly. She is waiting for you in the study when you are ready. An hour later, Chidinma stood before the full-length mirror in the guest room, barely recognizing herself. Mrs. Adebayo had sent up a beautiful navy blue dress, simple but elegant, clearly expensive, and matching shoes. Her hair, which had been a disaster last night, was now neatly braided by Patience. She looked like someone important. She felt like a fraud. Courage, Chidinma, she told her reflection. For Adana. Mrs. Adebayo was waiting in the study, dressed impeccably in a gold-embroidered buba and wrapper, her jewelry understated but clearly valuable. Beside her stood a tall man in his 50s, wearing a sharp suit. Chidinma, "This is Mr. Bobojid Williams, my attorney," Mrs. Adebayo said. "He's going to accompany us this morning." "Accompany us where?" Chidinma asked, though she already suspected the answer. "To reclaim what's yours," Mrs. Adebayo said firmly. "Your belongings, your dignity, and if your husband has any sense, an apology." "Mrs. Adebayo, I appreciate everything, but..." "Chidinma." The older woman's voice was still wrapped in silk. "You have a baby to think about. You need your documents, your clothes, your daughter's things. More than that, you need Obinna to understand that he cannot simply discard you like rubbish. Now, we can do this with grace, or we can do it the difficult way. But we are doing it." Chidinma looked at Mr. Williams, who gave her an encouraging nod. "Mrs. Okafor, I've reviewed your situation. Legally, you have every right to access your marital home and retrieve your personal property. You also have rights as a mother and a spouse. If your husband wishes to end the marriage, there are proper procedures, proper protections for you and your child." The word "end" hit Chidinma like a punch. Was it really over? After everything they'd built? But then she remembered Obinna's cold eyes, his rough hands pushing her into the storm, his mother's cruel satisfaction. "Let's go," she said quietly. The drive back to Lekki felt surreal. Chidinma sat in the back of the SUV, Adana in her arms, watching familiar streets pass by. Mrs. Adebayo rode in silence, her face composed, but Chidinma could feel the older woman's determination radiating like heat. When they pulled up to the Okafor house, Chidinma's stomach clenched. Obinna's car was still in the driveway. He hadn't gone to work. Mrs. Adebayo emerged from the SUV like a queen, her head held high. Mr. Williams followed, briefcase in hand. Chidinma came last, carrying Adana, her heart hammering. The security guard, Johnson, gaped at the procession. "Madam Chidinma." "Good morning, Johnson," she said softly. Mrs. Adebayo addressed him directly. "Please inform Mr. Okafor that he has visitors." Johnson scrambled to comply, speaking into his radio. Moments later, the front door opened. Obinna stood in the doorway, wearing yesterday's clothes, his hair disheveled, his eyes bloodshot. He stared at Chidinma, then at Mrs. Adebayo, confusion clouding his face. "Chidinma. Who, what?" "Mr. Obinna Okafor." Mr. Williams stepped forward. "My name is Bobojid Williams, attorney at law. I represent Mrs. Chidinma Okafor. We are here to retrieve her personal belongings and to discuss the legal implications of your actions last night." Obinna's face went pale. "Legal implications? You threw a nursing mother and infant into a storm, refusing them shelter," Mr. Williams said calmly. "That constitutes child endangerment and domestic cruelty. Now, we can handle this civilly, or we can involve the police and social services. Your choice." Before Obinna could respond, Mama Neka appeared behind him, her face already twisted in outrage. "Who are these people? Obinna, send them away. This is family business." Then she saw Mrs. Adebayo. The color drained from Mama Neka's face. "Adesewa." "Hello, Neka," Mrs. Adebayo said, her voice pleasant but her eyes ice cold. "It's been a long time. What are you doing here?" Mama Neka's voice was a harsh whisper. "I'm here because you threw out this innocent young woman and her baby last night. I'm here because your son, just like your husband, doesn't know how to value a good woman when he has one." Obinna looked between the two older women, bewildered. "You two know each other? Oh, didn't your mother tell you?" Mrs. Adebayo smiled. "Your father and I were very close. In fact, he died in my arms. A heart attack, sudden and tragic. I mourned him deeply." Mama Neka gasped, her hand flying to her chest. "How dare you speak of Chukudi? How dare I? How dare you, Neka, raise your son to treat women the way your husband treated you?" Chasing skirts all over Lagos while you pretended not to notice, then blaming the other women instead of holding him accountable. Obinna stumbled back. What is she talking about, Mama? It's lies. All lies. Mama Nneka screeched. Obinna, send these people away. Chidinma worked honestly to put herself through university, Mrs. Adebayo continued, her voice carrying authority that silenced everyone. She served food and drinks in a respectable hotel restaurant. There was no shame in that work. But you, she pointed at Mama Nneka, you judged her for surviving. You convinced your son to throw away his wife because she didn't come from wealth. Because she came from nowhere. Tears streamed down Mama Nneka's face. She lied to him. She worked to survive. Mrs. Adebayo's voice cracked like a whip. Just as you worked at Balegan Market. Just as I worked building my business from nothing after my family tried to control me. We all do what we must. But you, Nneka, you've become the very thing you hated, a judgmental, cruel, self-righteous. Obinna's eyes found Chidinma. She stood there, holding their daughter, her face streaked with tears, and for the first time, he really saw her, not through his mother's poisonous lens, not through his wounded pride, but as she truly was, strong, dignified, beautiful. Chidinma, he said hoarsely. Mrs. Okafor is here to collect her belongings, Mr. Williams interrupted. Please step aside. Chidinma walked past Obinna, her head high, and entered the house that had been her home. Everything looked the same, the furniture they'd chosen together, the photos on the wall, the nursery she'd lovingly decorated. But it all felt foreign now. Amora emerged from the hallway, her eyes wide with shock. Chidinma. Where did you go last night? I heard shouting, but I was on the phone with my fiancé, and by the time I came out. Your brother threw me out, Chidinma said simply. In the rain. With Adana. Amora's hands flew to her mouth. No. Obinna, tell me she's lying. Obinna said nothing, his shame finally catching up to him. Chidinma packed quickly, clothes, documents, Adana's things, her laptop, her few pieces of jewelry. Mrs. Adebayo stood in the doorway, a silent guardian, while Mr. Williams catalogued everything for his records. When Chidinma was done, she walked back to the living room, where Obinna sat on the couch, his head in his hands. Mama Nneka stood by the window, silent for once, her face a mask of bitterness. Obinna, Chidinma said quietly. He looked up, and she saw the regret in his eyes. But it was too late for regret. I loved you, she said. I was faithful to you. I worked hard to be a good wife, a good mother. But you believed the worst of me without even asking for my side of the story. You chose your mother's poison over our marriage. That's something I never forget. Chidinma, please, we can talk, we can fix. Fix what? The fact that when things got difficult, you threw me away. That you valued your pride more than your family. She shook her head. No, Obinna. Some things, once broken, can't be fixed. She turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and you should know, those photos were sent by someone in your family. Someone who wanted to destroy our marriage. Maybe you should ask yourself why. She walked out, Mrs. Adebayo and Mr. Williams flanking her. Behind her, Obinna called out, Who? Who sent them? But Chidinma didn't answer. Let him figure it out. Let him confront the serpents in his own house. As the SUV pulled away, Chidinma looked back one last time. Obinna stood in the doorway, watching her go, and for a moment, she felt a pang of sorrow for what might have been. But then Adana grabbed her finger, and Chidinma remembered what mattered most. We are going to be okay, baby, she whispered. I promise. Mrs. Adebayo reached over and squeezed her hand. More than okay, my dear. You're going to thrive. And that's the best revenge of all. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story with someone who loves emotional drama. But the drama was far from over, because in the Okafor house, Obinna was about to discover that Chidinma's accusation was absolutely correct. And the betrayer was closer than he ever imagined. Obinna stood frozen in the doorway long after the black SUV disappeared down the street. The morning sun beat down mercilessly, but he felt cold, hollow, as if something vital had been carved out of his chest. "Close the door, Obinna," Mama Nneka said sharply from behind him. "The neighbors are watching." He turned to face his mother, really seeing her for the first time in his life. The proud set of her jaw, the bitter lines around her mouth, the way she always seemed to be carrying some ancient grievance like a shield. "Did you know?" he asked quietly. "Know what?" "About Mrs. Adebayo. About Papa." Mama Nneka's face hardened. "Your father was a weak man. He dishonored us." "That's not what I asked." "What does it matter now?" "He's dead. That woman is living her best life in Ikoyi while she stopped, her lips pressed into a thin line. "While you what, Mama?" "While you raised us to be bitter. To judge everyone. To believe that anyone who struggles isn't worthy of respect." Obinna's voice rose. "I just threw out my wife. The mother of my child." "And why?" "Because she worked as a waitress. She lied to you. She survived." He roared, shocking even himself. Mama Nneka stepped back, eyes wide. She was an orphan with no one to help her, and she did what she had to do. What would you have had her do? Beg? Steal? Watch your tone with your mother? No. Obinna shook his head. "I'm done watching my tone. I'm done letting you poison my mind. Chidinma was right, someone sent those photos deliberately to destroy my marriage. And I want to know who." "How should I know who?" "Mama." Obinna's voice was ice. "Did you send them?" The silence stretched too long. "It was for your own good," Mama Nneka finally said, her chin lifted defiantly. "That girl was not suitable for this family. I did what any mother would do." "You sent them?" Obinna felt the word tilt. "How did you even get them?" "I didn't. Ifeoma sent them to me first, months ago. She'd hired someone to investigate Chidinma's background when you first started dating. I kept them, waiting for the right moment." Amora gasped from the hallway. "You've been planning this for months." "Mama, how could you?" "Ifeoma." Obinna's mind reeled. His cousin Ifeoma, who'd always been around, always helpful, always offering unsolicited advice about his marriage. Why would Ifeoma? "Because she's in love with you, you fool." Amora burst out, her eyes blazing. "She has been since we were teenagers. Mama promised her that you would marry her after university, but then you met Chidinma and fell in love. Ifeoma never forgave either of you." The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Ifeoma's constant visits. Her subtle criticisms of Chidinma. Her comments about how Chidinma wasn't like us. The way she'd been so eager to help plan Adana's christening, so involved in every family event. "Where is Ifeoma now?" Obinna asked quietly, dangerously. "She's supposed to come by this afternoon. Call her. Tell her to come now." Mama Nneka crossed her arms. "Obinna, you're being dramatic." "Yes, I used the photos, but everything I said about that girl was true. She came from nothing. Get out of my house." Obinna's roar shook the windows. Mama Nneka recoiled as if it struck her. "What? You heard me. Pack your things and get out. Go back to your house in Suralia. You're no longer welcome here. I'm your mother. You're a manipulator. A schemer. You destroyed my marriage because of your own bitterness, your own prejudices." Obinna's voice broke. "I threw my wife and baby out into a storm, Mama. I could have killed them. And for what? Your pride. Obinna, you can't mean this. Amora, help Mama pack, Obinna said, his voice dead. I want her gone within the hour. Amora nodded, tears streaming down her face. Yes, brother. As Mama Neka sputtered protest, Obinna pulled out his phone. His hands shook as he dialed Ifeoma's number. She answered on the second ring, her voice syrupy sweet. Cousin. I heard about last night. Such a shame about Chidinma. But maybe it's for the best. Come to my house. Now. Oh. Is everything okay? You have 30 minutes. Don't be late. He hung up and sank onto the couch, his head in his hands. What had he done? He'd been so quick to believe the worst, so ready to discard the woman who stood by him, supported him, loved him unconditionally. And why? Because his mother had whispered poison in his ear since the day he'd brought Chidinma home to meet the family. He remembered their first meeting. Chidinma had been nervous, clutching a homemade pound cake, wearing her best dress, a simple thing from Yoba market. Mama Neka had taken one look at her and immediately begun asking questions. Where is your family from? What does your father do? Oh, both parents are dead. That's unfortunate. And no siblings. No one. He'd watched Chidinma's smile falter, watched her become smaller under his mother's interrogation. He should have defended her then. He should have told his mother that Chidinma's lack of family didn't define her worth. Instead, he'd made excuses. Mama is just protective. She'll come around. But Mama Neka had never come around. She'd just gotten more subtle, more insidious. Comments about Chidinma's cooking, it's good, but not quite how we make it in this family. Critiques of her housekeeping, a proper Igbo wife would never let the settle on the furniture. Questions about money, Obinna, are you sure she's not spending too much? Women from her background sometimes don't know how to manage. And he'd believed it all. He'd let those seeds of doubt take root. The doorbell rang exactly 28 minutes later. Obinna opened it to find Ifeoma standing there, impeccably dressed in a fitted pencil skirt and blouse, her makeup perfect, her smile practiced. Cousin, you sounded so urgent on the phone. Is everything? She stopped when she saw his face. What's wrong? Come in. She entered, her eyes darting around nervously. Amora stood in the hallway, arms crossed, her expression cold. Mama Neka was conspicuously absent. Amora had already packed her into a taxi despite her protest. Sit down, Ifeoma, Obinna said. I'd rather stand. I said sit. She perched on the edge of the armchair, her hands twisting in her lap. Obinna, you're scaring me. Good. He pulled out his phone and showed her the photos, the same ones that had been sent to him yesterday. Did you send this? Her eyes widened, but Obinna caught the flash of calculation behind the shock. No. Why would I? Mama already told me everything. You hired someone to investigate Chidinma. You found these photos and gave them to Mama. The two of you have been planning this for months. Ifeoma's facade cracked. She told you. Everything. That stupid old woman, Ifeoma muttered. Then, realizing what she'd said, she tried to recover. Obinna, you have to understand. I did it because I care about you. That girl was never good enough for you. You deserve someone from a proper family, someone who understands our culture, our values. Someone like you. Ifeoma's cheeks flushed. Yes. Someone like me. We grew up together, Obinna. Our families have been close for generations. We understand each other. But you threw all that away for some orphan who worked in a bar. Hotel restaurant, Obinna corrected coldly. And she worked there to pay for her education. To better herself. While you, Ifeoma, what have you ever done besides spend your father's money and scheme to destroy other people's happiness? I love you. The words burst from her like a confession. I've loved you since we were 16. Auntie Neka promised me that after you finish university, we would marry. She promised. But then you met that girl, and suddenly I didn't matter anymore. Because I didn't love you, Ifeoma. I never loved you. Not like that. You could have learned to love me. Tears streamed down her face, ruining her careful makeup. If you'd just given us a chance. So you destroyed my marriage instead. You put my wife and baby in danger because of some childhood fantasy. Obinna's voice was lethal. Do you have any idea what you've done? I freed you. Ifeoma stood, her voice rising hysterically. She would have dragged you down, Obinna. Women like that always do. They trap men with pregnancy and then. Get out. Obinna pointed to the door. Get out of my house and never come back. You are not my family. You are nothing to me. Obinna, please. If you ever contact me again, if you ever come near my daughter, I will file charges for harassment, for conspiracy, for whatever my lawyer can think of. Do you understand? Ifeoma stared at him, her face a mask of hatred and heartbreak. You'll regret this. She won't take you back. Why would she? You threw her away like garbage. And when you're alone and miserable, don't come crying to me. I'd rather be alone than have anything to do with you. She grabbed her purse and stormed out, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the frames on the wall. Amora emerged from the hallway, her eyes red from crying. I'm so sorry, brother. I should have told you about Ifeoma's feelings. I should have warned you. You knew. Not about the photos. But I knew she was obsessed with you. I thought it was harmless. I never imagined she'd go this far. Amora wiped her eyes. What are you going to do now? I'm going to get my wife back. Obinna, I don't think. I know it won't be easy. I know I've destroyed her trust. But I have to try, Amora. I have to make this right. What about Mama? Obinna's jaw tightened. Mama made her choice. She can live with the consequences. He picked up his phone and dialed the number for Mrs. Adebayo's lawyer, the one on the business card Mr. Williams had left behind. When the man answered, Obinna took a deep breath. Mr. Williams. This is Obinna Okafor. I need to speak with my wife. And I need to know what I have to do to make things right. Meanwhile, across town in Ikoyi, Chidinma sat in Mrs. Adebayo's sun-drenched living room, Adana sleeping peacefully in her arms. Mrs. Adebayo had given her space all morning, but now the older woman entered with 2 cups of tea. How are you feeling? She asked gently. Numb, Chidinma admitted. I keep expecting to wake up and find out this was all a nightmare. I know that feeling. Mrs. Adebayo settled into her chair. After Chekudi died, after the scandal, I felt the same way. But eventually, the numbness fades. And then you have a choice: let the pain destroy you, or use it to build something stronger. What did you do? I built an empire. Mrs. Adebayo smiled. I took all that anger, all that hurt, and I channeled it into my businesses. I proved to everyone, including myself, that I didn't need a man to define my worth. And you know what? I found peace. Not happiness, not at first. But peace. I don't want an empire, Chidinma said softly. I just want my daughter to be safe and happy. Then we'll make sure of that. I've already spoken to Mr. Williams about setting up a trust fund for Adana. Whatever happens between you and Obinna, your daughter will be provided for. Chidinma's eyes filled with tears. Why are you doing all this for me? You don't even know me. Because I see myself in you, child. And because no woman should have to face what you faced last night alone. Mrs. Adebayo reached over and squeezed her hand. You have value, Chidinma. Not because of who you married, not because of where you came from, but because of who you are. A survivor. A fighter. A good mother. The doorbell rang. Patience appeared moments later, looking flustered. "Madam, there is a Mr. Okafor here. He says he needs to speak with Mrs. Chidinma." Chidinma's heart lurched. "I can't, I'm not ready." "You don't have to see him if you don't want to," Mrs. Adebayo said firmly. "I can have him sent away." But even as she said it, Chidinma felt something pull at her heart. What if he'd come to apologize? What if he'd finally understood? "No," she said quietly. "I'll see him. But only for a few minutes." Mrs. Adebayo nodded and stood. "I'll be right here if you need me." Obinna entered the living room looking like he hadn't slept. His clothes were rumpled, his eyes haunted. He stopped when he saw Chidinma, his face crumpling with emotion. "Chidinma. You have 5 minutes," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I know who sent the photos. It was Ifeoma and my mother. They'd been planning it for months." The words stumbled out. "I confronted them. I threw my mother out of my house. I told Ifeoma never to contact me again. And I'm so sorry." Chidinma said nothing. She just watched him, waiting. "You were right about everything," he continued, his voice breaking. "I chose my mother's poison over our marriage. I believed the worst of you without even giving you a chance to explain. I threw you out into a storm with our baby, and he fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. I could have killed you both. And I will never forgive myself for that. Obinna. Please, let me finish. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to come back. But I need you to know that I love you. I've always loved you. And I was a fool to let anyone convince me otherwise." Chidinma looked at this man she'd loved, this man who destroyed her with his cruelty, and felt nothing. No, that wasn't true. She felt pity. And sadness. But not love. Not anymore. "I appreciate your apology," she said quietly. "But apologies don't erase what happened. They don't erase the fact that when things got difficult, you chose your mother over me. Over our daughter. I know. But I want to make it right. I want to prove to you. You can't prove anything to me, Obinna. You can only prove it to yourself. And maybe, if you work on becoming a better man, you can prove it to Adana when she's old enough to ask why her parents aren't together. So that's it. We are finished. That's for you to decide. I'm not coming back to that house. I'm not going to live under the same roof as your mother ever again. And I'm not going to spend the rest of my life wondering when the next betrayal will come." Obinna's face went pale. "What if I could promise?" "Don't make promises you can't keep." Chidinma stood, Adana stirring in her arms. "Go home, Obinna. Think about what you really want. Because if you want me back, you're going to have to do more than apologize. You're going to have to prove that you've changed. And that takes time." She walked past him toward the door, then paused. "Oh, and Obinna. Next time someone tries to poison your mind against someone you love, ask yourself why. Ask yourself what they have to gain. Because people who love you don't destroy your happiness." She left him there, kneeling on Mrs. Adebayo's expensive rug, broken and alone. Sunday morning arrived with the peal of church bells across Lagos. Chidinma stood in front of the mirror in Mrs. Adebayo's guest room, staring at her reflection in the elegant choir dress the older woman had insisted she wear. It had been exactly 1 week since the storm, 1 week since her life had shattered and somehow begun to rebuild itself. "You look beautiful," Mrs. Adebayo said from the doorway. "Are you ready?" "I don't know if I can do this," Chidinma whispered. Facing everyone at church, knowing they'll all be talking. "Let them talk. You've done nothing wrong, child. Hold your head high. They were going to Redeemed Christian Church in Victoria Island, the same church where Adana had been christened, the same church where Chidinma and Obinna had been married 2 years ago. Pastor Emeka had called personally, asking Chidinma to come, assuring her she was welcome and loved. But welcome and love didn't erase the anxiety coiling in Chidinma's stomach. The church parking lot was crowded when they arrived. Mrs. Adebayo's driver helped them out, and immediately, heads turned. Chidinma felt the weight of dozens of eyes, heard the whispers rippling through the crowd. "Is that Chidinma?" "I heard her husband threw her out." "But why is she with Chief Mrs. Adebayo?" "Look at that dress, it must have cost." Mrs. Adebayo took Chidinma's arm firmly. "Walk with confidence. You are not the one who should be ashamed." They entered the church, and the whispers grew louder. Chidinma saw familiar faces, women from the women's fellowship who'd always been kind to her, men from Obinna's professional circle, families who'd celebrated Adana's christening just days ago. And there, in the third row, sat Obinna with Amora. Mama Neka was conspicuously absent. When Obinna's eyes met Chidinma's, she saw raw longing and regret. She looked away. Mrs. Adebayo guided her to the second row, the seats traditionally reserved for honored church members and major donors. More whispers. Everyone knew Mrs. Adebayo's status, her wealth, her influence, her history. The service began with energetic worship, the choir's voices lifting in praise. Chidinma tried to focus on the music, on Adana sleeping peacefully in her arms, on anything except the burning awareness that hundreds of people were watching her. Then came Pastor Emeka's sermon. "Today, I want to talk about judgment," the pastor began, his voice resonating through the sanctuary. "About how quick we are to condemn others, how eager we are to believe the worst about people, especially when we don't know their full story." Chidinma's heart began to pound. "I've been a pastor for 25 years, Pastor Emeka continued, and I've seen how gossip can destroy families, how assumptions can ruin reputations, how pride can tear apart what God has joined together. And I've seen it happen right here, in this very church, just last week." The congregation shifted uncomfortably. Several people glanced toward Chidinma. "Some of you know that one of our young families is going through a crisis. A wife was thrown out of her home because of photos from her past, photos that showed her working an honest job to put herself through university after her parents died. She was judged. She was condemned. She and her infant daughter were put in danger. All because people believed rumors instead of seeking the truth." Obinna's head dropped into his hands. "But here's what I want you to understand," Pastor Emeka said, his voice rising with passion. "That young woman did nothing wrong. She survived. She worked hard. She built a life from nothing. And instead of celebrating her strength, instead of admiring her resilience, some people tore her down. Why? Because she didn't come from the right family. Because she had to struggle while others had everything handed to them." "Amen," someone called out. More voices joined in agreement. "The Bible says, 'Judge not, lest ye be judged.' It says, 'Let he who is without sin cast the first stone.' But how many of us live by those words? How many of us are quick to point fingers while hiding our own sins?" Pastor Emeka's eyes swept across the congregation, and Chidinma could have sworn he looked directly at the section where Mama Neka usually sat. "I want to say this clearly, Sister Chidinma is welcome in this church. She is valued, she is loved, and she has done nothing to be ashamed of. If anyone has a problem with that, I invite you to come see me after service. But know this is a house of God, not a house of gossip and judgment." The sanctuary erupted in applause. Chidinma felt tears streaming down her face as women around her reached over to squeeze her hand, to pat her shoulder, to whisper words of encouragement. After the service, Chidinma was surrounded. Sister Ngozi, from the Women's Fellowship, hugged her tightly. "I always knew you were a strong woman. Don't let anyone tell you different." Brother Chokuma, one of the church elders, approached with his wife. "We are praying for you and your family. If you need anything at all, please don't hesitate to ask." Even some of Obinna's colleagues from the bank came over, awkwardly expressing their support. "We never believed those rumors," one said. Obinna was a fool to listen to them. Through it all, Mrs. Adebayo stood like a pillar beside Chidinma, her presence a shield and an endorsement. Everyone in Lagos high society knew Chief Mrs. Adebayo. If she'd taken Chidinma under her wing, that meant something. Obinna tried to approach, but Amora held him back, whispering urgently in his ear. Chidinma was grateful. She wasn't ready to face him in public, not yet. As they were leaving, a young woman in her early 20s approached hesitantly. "Excuse me, Mrs. Chidinma." Chidinma turned. The woman's eyes were red from crying. "My name is Blessing. I just wanted to thank you." "Thank me? For what?" "For being brave. You see, I'm engaged to be married in 3 months, but I've been terrified because I also had to work during my university years. I sold clothes at a market stand. And my fiancé's family, they are wealthy, and they don't know. I've been afraid to tell them because I thought they'd judge me," just like, she gestured helplessly. "But seeing you here today, seeing Pastor Emeka defend you, seeing all these people support you, it gave me courage. I'm going to tell my fiancé the truth. And if his family can't accept me, then he's not the right man for me." Chidinma took Blessing's hands. "You have nothing to be ashamed of. Working hard, surviving, building a life for yourself, those are things to be proud of." "Thank you," Blessing whispered. "Thank you for showing me that." As they drove back to Ekoi, Mrs. Adebayo smiled. "Do you see, Chidinma? Your story is already helping others. That's the power of standing in your truth." But when they arrived home, Patience was waiting with a worried expression. "Madam, there have been calls. Many calls. Some from newspapers, some from radio stations. They all want to interview Mrs. Chidinma about what happened." Chidinma's stomach dropped. "The media. It seems the story has gotten out," Mrs. Adebayo said grimly. "Someone must have talked to reporters. What should I do?" "That's up to you, my dear. You can ignore them, or you can tell your story on your own terms. But if you choose to speak, I'll support you. And my lawyers will make sure no one can twist your words or exploit you." Chidinma thought about Blessing, about the other young women who might be hiding their past, ashamed of the hard work that had gotten them where they were. She thought about Mama Neka and Ifeoma, still out there somewhere, probably spinning their own version of events. "I want to tell my story," she said firmly. "But not to a tabloid. I want to do it right." Mrs. Adebayo nodded approvingly. "I know just the person. Give me an hour." 2 hours later, Chidinma sat across from Amoka Nwankwo, one of Nigeria's most respected television journalists, in Mrs. Adebayo's elegant sitting room. The cameras were set up, the lighting perfect. "Are you ready?" Amoka asked gently. Chidinma looked at Adana, sleeping in her bouncer nearby, then at Mrs. Adebayo, who gave her an encouraging nod. "I'm ready. Let's begin." "Chidinma, thank you for agreeing to this interview. Tell me, in your own words, what happened last Sunday night?" Chidinma took a deep breath and began to speak. She told the truth, all of it. Her parents' death. Working her way through university. Meeting Obinna. The photos. The accusations. The storm. Mrs. Adebayo's rescue. "What do you want people to understand from your story?" Amoka asked. "That there's no shame in honest work. That struggling doesn't make you less worthy of love or respect. And that before we judge someone, we should ask ourselves, what would I have done in their situation? What about your husband? Do you think your marriage can be saved?" Chidinma paused, choosing her words carefully. I think Obinna is a good man who made a terrible mistake. He listened to the wrong people, and he let pride and fear control his actions. Whether our marriage can be saved depends on whether he can grow from this experience. But regardless of what happens between us, I want my daughter to grow up knowing that her mother never gave up, never stopped fighting, and never accepted anyone's judgment about her worth. And what would you say to other women facing similar situations? Chidinma looked directly into the camera. Stand strong. Your past doesn't define your future. The people who truly love you will accept all of you, your struggles, your survival, your strength. And the people who can't, they don't deserve a place in your life. When the interview ended, Chidinma felt lighter, as if she'd set down a heavy burden. That was powerful, Amoka said, packing up her equipment. This will air tomorrow night. I think you're going to inspire a lot of people. That evening, as Chidinma fed Adana dinner, Mrs. Adebayo's phone rang. She answered, listened for a moment, then her eyebrows rose. That was my contact at the bank, she said. Apparently, Obinna's superior saw Pastor Emeka's sermon. It's already circulating on social media. They've called him in for a meeting tomorrow morning. What kind of meeting? The disciplinary kind. Domestic violence, even by proxy, doesn't look good for someone in a senior position. They are concerned about the bank's reputation. Chidinma felt a pound of concern despite everything. Will he lose his job? That depends on how he handles himself. But Chidinma, you need to understand something: consequences are not your responsibility. Obinna made his choices. Now he has to live with them. That night, Chidinma lay awake, thinking about everything that had happened. In 1 week, her life had completely transformed. She'd lost her marriage but gained her self-respect. She'd been thrown out but found sanctuary. She'd been judged but had found vindication. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number: "You're a homewrecker and a liar. Obinna should have thrown you out sooner. You don't deserve him." Chidinma stared at the message, her stomach churning. So there were still people out there who believed the lies, who hated her without even knowing her. She blocked the number and typed a message in her prayer group chat instead: "Thank you all for your support today. I felt your prayers. Please continue to pray for my family, all of us need healing." The responses came immediately, dozens of women offering encouragement, sharing their own stories of judgment and redemption. Chidinma smiled through her tears. She wasn't alone. She'd never been alone. But across town, in his empty house in Lekki, Obinna sat in the dark, watching his life crumble around him. His mother wasn't speaking to him. His cousin had spread vicious rumors about him and Chidinma throughout the extended family. His colleagues whispered when he passed. And tomorrow, he had to face a disciplinary committee that could end his career. All because of one night. One terrible decision. His phone lit up with a news alert: exclusive interview, young mother speaks out after being thrown out in storm, full story tomorrow night. Obinna's hands shook. Chidinma was going public. And he had no one to blame but himself. The interview aired at 8 p.m. on Nigeria's most watched evening news program. By 8:45 p.m., it had been clipped, shared, and commented on thousands of times across social media. By morning, Chidinma's face was everywhere, on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, even trending on TikTok, with young women sharing their own stories of judgment and survival using the hashtag #IamChidinma. Obinna watched the interview alone in his living room, a glass of whiskey untouched in his hand. He watched his wife, his beautiful, strong wife, speak with dignity and grace about the worst night of her life. He saw the pain in her eyes when she talked about standing in the storm, heard the strength in her voice when she declared her worth. And he understood, with devastating clarity, exactly what he'd lost. His phone exploded with notifications. Some were supportive messages from friends and colleagues who finally understood what had happened. But many more were brutal. You're a disgrace to all men. How could you throw out your own child? You don't deserve her. I hope she never takes you back. He couldn't argue with any of it. At 7 a.m., his doorbell rang. Obinna opened it to find Amora standing there with grocery bags. I brought breakfast, she said simply. You look terrible. They sat in the kitchen while she made eggs and plantains. Obinna picked at his food, unable to eat. What am I going to do, Amora? You're going to get through today's meeting at the bank. Then you're going to figure out how to become the man Chidinma thought she married. What if it's too late? Then it's too late. But that doesn't mean you stop trying. You have a daughter, Obinna. Even if Chidinma never forgives you, Adana will grow up one day and ask what happened. What story do you want to be able to tell her? The meeting at the bank was brutal. Obinna sat across from his boss, Mr. Adeyemi, and 2 HR representatives while they reviewed the incident. We've received numerous complaints, Mr. Adeyemi said, his face grave. Clients asking if you're the man from that interview. Staff members expressing concern. This reflects poorly on the bank's values. I understand, sir. I take full responsibility for my actions. Do you? Because from what I've seen, your actions endanger the woman and child. That's not just poor judgment, Mr. Okafor. That's cruelty. Obinna swallowed hard. Sir, I know I can't undo what I did. But I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make amends. The HR representative, a stern woman named Mrs. Adebola, leaned forward. We're placing you on a 3-month suspension without pay. During that time, you'll attend mandatory counseling, both individual therapy and sessions on domestic conflict resolution. You'll also volunteer with the Lagos Women's Crisis Center. If, after 3 months, your therapist and the center's director provide positive reports, you can return to your position. But you'll be on probation for a full year. I understand. One more thing, Mr. Adeyemi added. You'll issue a public apology. A real one, not a PR statement written by lawyers. You'll own what you did and commit to doing better. Can you do that? Obinna nodded, his throat tight. Yes, sir. That evening, Obinna crafted his statement. He wrote and rewrote it a dozen times, finally settling on words that felt true. My name is Obinna Okafor, and I owe my wife, Chidinma, a public apology. Last Sunday, I made the worst decision of my life. I listened to malicious gossip instead of trusting the woman I married. I let pride and family pressure override my judgment. And I put my wife and infant daughter in danger by throwing them out into a storm. There is no excuse for what I did. No justification. I was wrong, completely, utterly wrong. Chidinma worked hard to build a life after losing her parents. She survived. She thrived. And instead of celebrating her strength, I punished her for it. I've lost my wife's trust, possibly forever. I've damaged my daughter's future. And I've disappointed everyone who believed I was a good man. But I'm committed to becoming a better person. I'm seeking therapy. I'm volunteering to help other families in crisis. And I'm here to say to every man watching, don't be like me. Don't let pride destroy your family. Don't let other people's opinions matter more than your wife's worth. Chidinma, if you're watching this, I'm sorry. I know sorry isn't enough. But I promise you, I will spend the rest of my life proving that I can change. For you, for Adana, and for myself. He posted it on all his social media platforms, then sent it to major news outlets. Within hours, the responses flooded in. Some people praised his honesty. Others said it was too little, too late. A few women shared that his apology had inspired their own husbands to reflect on their behavior. But the only response he cared about never came. Chidinma remained silent. 3 weeks later, Chidinma sat in Mrs. Adebayo's garden, watching Adana play on a blanket in the sunshine. The baby was growing so fast, already laughing and reaching for toys with chubby hands. "You've been quiet today," Mrs. Adebayo observed, settling into the chair beside her. "What's on your mind?" "I keep thinking about Obinna's apology. And the messages I've been getting, hundreds of women telling me their stories, thanking me for speaking out. That's a good thing, isn't it?" "It is. But it's also overwhelming. I didn't ask to be a spokesperson for betrayed wives. I just wanted to survive." "You're more than a survivor now, Chidinma. You're a voice for change." Mrs. Adebayo paused. "Have you thought about what you want to do next? You can't hide in my house forever, not that you aren't welcome, but you're a young woman with your whole life ahead of you." Chidinma had been thinking about exactly that. She'd completed her degree in business administration before marrying Obinna, but she'd never used it. She'd always thought she'd go back to work after Adana was older, but Mama Neka had made it clear that proper wives stayed home. "I want to start something," she said slowly. "A foundation, maybe. To help young women who are struggling with education costs, with finding work, with escaping bad situations. I want them to know there's no shame in fighting for their future." Mrs. Adebayo's face lit up. "Now that is an excellent idea. I can help you set it up. We'll need funding, a board of directors, proper legal structure. I can't ask you to." "You're not asking. I'm offering. Consider it an investment in the next generation." Mrs. Adebayo smiled. "Besides, I've been looking for a worthy cause to pour my energy into. This feels right." Over the next month, Chidinma threw herself into building the foundation. She named it Rising Phoenix Foundation, in honor of women who rose from their ashes. Mrs. Adebayo provided seed funding and connected Chidinma with other wealthy donors. Pastor Emeka offered the church's support. Even some of Obinna's former colleagues reached out, wanting to contribute. The foundation's first initiative was a scholarship program for orphan girls pursuing university degrees. The second was a job training center for women who'd been out of the workforce. The third was a crisis hotline for women facing domestic issues. The launch event was held at Mrs. Adebayo's mansion, with over 200 attendees including prominent business people, politicians, and celebrities. Chidinma stood at the podium, Adana on her hip, and spoke about second chances and the power of supporting each other. "I never imagined I'd be standing here today," she said. 3 months ago, I was at my lowest point. But because one woman, Chief Mrs. Adebayo, chose to stop and help, my life changed. Now I want to be that person for others. I want to be the one who stops, who reaches out a hand, who says, 'You are worthy.'" The room erupted in applause. Cameras flashed. Donors lined up to write checks. And in the back of the room, unnoticed by most, stood Obinna. He'd come hoping just to see Chidinma and Adana from afar. But watching his wife command that room, watching her shine with purpose and confidence, he felt his heart break all over again. This was the woman he'd thrown away. This was the woman he'd failed to see, failed to appreciate, failed to protect. After the event, as guests mingled over canapes and champagne, Obinna approached hesitantly. Mrs. Adebayo saw him first, her eyes narrowing. "Mr. Okafor. I didn't know you were invited." "I wasn't," he admitted. "But I needed to see what Chidinma is doing. I'm so proud of her." "You have no right to be proud," Mrs. Adebayo said coldly. "You have no right to be here at all." "I know. But I've been doing the work, the therapy, the volunteering. I've been learning how to be better. And I thought maybe if I could just talk to her for 5 minutes." "No." Chidinma's voice came from behind him. Obinna turned to find her standing there, beautiful in a green Ankara dress, Adana asleep against her shoulder. "Not here. Not at my event. Chidinma, please." I just want to. I know what you want, Obinna. You've been sending letters, flowers, donations to the foundation in your name. I see all of it. Then you know I'm trying. Trying isn't the same as succeeding. Her voice was calm but firm. You hurt me deeply. You endangered our daughter. And while I appreciate that you're working on yourself, that doesn't erase what happened. I'm not asking you to erase it. I'm asking for a chance to prove. Prove what? That you won't throw me out the next time someone sends you a photo. That you won't believe the worst of me the next time your mother whispers poison in your ear. Chidinma shook her head. I've built a life now, Obinna. A good life. I wake up every morning knowing my worth. I go to sleep every night knowing I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Can you say the same? Obinna's eyes filled with tears. No. Because I'm supposed to be with you. With our daughter. That's where I belong. You gave up that right when you chose pride over love. People make mistakes, Chidinma. People change. Isn't that what your foundation is about? Second chances. Second chances are for people who've earned them, Mrs. Adebayo interjected, stepping protectively beside Chidinma. What have you earned besides a public relations redemption arc? I've been volunteering at the Women's Crisis Center for 3 months, Obinna said, his voice steady despite the tears. I've sat with men who beat their wives, men who control every aspect of their partners' lives, men who justify their cruelty with tradition and culture. And I've seen myself in them, not in the violence, but in the entitlement. The belief that we have the right to judge, to control, to punish. He turned back to Chidinma. I listened to a woman last week who reminded me of you. Her husband threw her out because she got a job without asking his permission. She was sleeping in a shelter with her 3 children. And when I asked her what she wanted, you know what she said? I just want him to see me. To really see me. And I realized that's what I never did with you, Chidinma. I never truly saw you. Chidinma's expression softened slightly, but she didn't speak. I saw what I wanted to see, Obinna continued. A beautiful woman who chose me. A perfect wife who made me look good. A mother for my children. But I never saw the orphan who survived impossible odds. The waitress who served 1,000 customers with a smile while her heart was breaking. The student who studied until 3 a.m. because education was her only way out. The warrior who took every blow life gave her and kept standing. He wiped his eyes. That's who you are. And I was too blind, too arrogant, too poisoned by my mother's bitterness to see it. But I see it now. And I'm so sorry it took losing you for me to finally understand what I had. Silence stretched between them. Adana stirred, making a soft sound. Chidinma patted her back gently, her eyes never leaving Obinna's face. I believe you're sorry, she finally said. I believe you've grown. But Obinna, I've grown too. And the woman I am now, she doesn't need you to complete her. She doesn't need anyone's validation. She knows her worth. I'm not asking you to need me. I'm asking you to let me earn your trust back. Let me prove I can be the husband you deserve, the father Adana deserves. And what about your mother? Chidinma asked quietly. What about the family that never accepted me? My mother is living in Suralia. Alone. Because I told her she's not welcome in my life until she apologizes to you and means it. Ifeoma has been banned from all family gatherings. And I've made it clear to everyone, if they can't respect my wife, they can't be part of my daughter's life. Mrs. Adebayo raised an eyebrow, clearly impressed despite herself. That's a start, Chidinma acknowledged. But it's just that, a start. Trust isn't rebuilt in 3 months, Obinna. It takes years. And I'm not sure I have years to give. Then give me days. Give me moments. Let me see Adana, let me be part of her life. Even if you and I never reconcile romantically, she deserves to have a father who shows up, who does the work, who proves through actions that he's changed. Chidinma looked down at their sleeping daughter, then back at Obinna. You can see her. Supervised visits, here at Mrs. Adebayo's house, twice a week. You can bring her gifts, spend time with her, be her father. But you and I? We are not there yet. We may never be there again. I'll take it, Obinna said immediately. Whatever you're willing to give, I'll take it. And Obinna. Chidinma's voice hardened slightly. If you ever, and I mean ever, make me feel small again, if you ever choose anyone's opinion over my well-being, if you ever put our daughter in danger because of your pride, I will disappear so completely you'll never find us. Do you understand? I understand. Good. Now leave. This is my night, my achievement. I won't have it overshadowed by our drama. Obinna nodded and turned to go. But at the door, he paused. Chidinma. I know I don't deserve to say this, but I'm proud of you. This foundation, what you're doing for other women, it's incredible. You're incredible. You always were. After he left, Mrs. Adebayo let out a long breath. Well, that was unexpected. Was I too harsh? Chidinma asked. No, my dear. You were perfect. Firm but fair. That's exactly how you handle a man who needs to prove himself. She smiled. Though I'll admit, he said some things I didn't expect. That bit about seeing himself in those other men, that showed real self-awareness. It did, Chidinma agreed. But self-awareness isn't the same as change. Time will tell if he really means it. And if he does? If he proves himself over the next year, the next 2 years. What then? Chidinma looked at Adana, who'd woken up and was now playing with her mother's necklace, her eyes bright with curiosity. Then maybe we try again. Maybe we build something new, something stronger. But only if he proves, truly proves, that he's become a man I can trust. A man our daughter can trust. Fair enough. Mrs. Adebayo squeezed her shoulder. Now, come. You have donors to thank and a speech to give about the scholarship recipients. Tonight is about celebration, not past pain. As Chidinma rejoined the party, she felt lighter. She'd confronted Obinna, set clear boundaries, and still held firm to her worth. That was power. That was growth. 6 months later, Chidinma sat in Mrs. Adebayo's garden watching Obinna play with Adana. The baby was almost a year old now, walking with wobbly steps, laughing as her father pretended to chase her around the grass. She loves him, Mrs. Adebayo observed, joining Chidinma with 2 glasses of fresh passion fruit juice. She does, Chidinma admitted. And he's been consistent. Twice a week for 6 months, never missed a visit. Never made excuses. I've heard he's doing well at work too. Got promoted last month. He told me. He wanted me to know he's building stability for Adana's future. And for yours. Chidinma smiled. He's trying. I'll give him that. Indeed, Obinna had been more than consistent. He'd paid child support without being asked. He'd attended every single one of Adana's doctor's appointments. When Chidinma had pneumonia last month, he'd sent a care package and offered to take extra time with Adana so she could rest. When the foundation needed volunteers for a fundraiser, he'd shown up with 10 colleagues from his bank. He'd also kept his distance romantically, no inappropriate comments, no pressure, just steady, reliable presence. Mama. Adana called out, reaching for Chidinma. Obinna brought her over, and the baby climbed into her mother's lap, then reached back for her father. Without thinking, Obinna sat down beside Chidinma, and suddenly they were sitting together, their daughter bridging the space between them. She's getting so big, Obinna said softly. I almost missed all of this. Yes, Chidinma said simply. You almost did. They sat in comfortable silence, watching Adana play with her toys. Then Obinna spoke. My mother came to see me last week. Chidinma tensed. Oh. She wanted to apologize. Not to me, to you. She asked if she could write you a letter. What did you tell her? I told her that it wasn't my decision to make. That if she wanted to apologize, she needed to do it on your terms, not hers. And that even if you agreed to hear her out, forgiveness wasn't guaranteed or required. Good answer. Chidinma. Obinna turned to face her. I know it's only been 6 months. I know you said it takes years. But I need you to know something. I'm not doing this to win you back, although I hope for that every single day. I'm doing this because it's right. Because Adana deserves a father who shows up. Because you deserved better from the beginning. I know, Chidinma said quietly. I can see the difference. You're not the same man who threw me out that night. No. I'm not. That man was a coward who let other people's voices drown out his own heart. This man, he gestured to himself, this man is learning to think for himself. To value what matters. To put his daughter and his family first. And what about your family? Your mother, your extended family. They've learned that you're non-negotiable. That respecting you is the price of being in Adana's life. Some of them have accepted that. Others. He shrugged. Their loss. Chidinma studied his face, the new lines around his eyes, the grey hair starting to show at his temples, the humility that had replaced his old arrogance. I'm not ready yet, she said finally. For us. For marriage again. But I think, maybe, we could try family counseling. See if we can build something new. Obinna's face lit up with hope. Really? Really? But with ground rules. We go slow. We focus on being good co-parents first. And if at any point I feel like you're slipping back into old patterns, we stop. Agreed. Agreed. Absolutely agreed. Mrs. Adebayo had discreetly disappeared, giving them privacy. Adana, tired from playing, had fallen asleep in Chidinma's arms. She's beautiful, Obinna whispered, touching their daughter's soft curls. Just like her mother. She's strong, Chidinma corrected. She survived the storm when she was 3 months old. She's a fighter. Like her mother, Obinna repeated. They sat together until the sun began to set, painting the garden in gold and orange light. And for the first time in a year, Chidinma allowed herself to hope. Not that everything would go back to the way it was, that was impossible, and she didn't want it anyway. But maybe they could build something new. Something stronger. Something based on mutual respect, hard-won trust, and the kind of love that survives storms. 1 year later, the Rising Phoenix Foundation held its annual gala. Chidinma stood at the podium, radiant in a gold dress, announcing that they'd awarded 50 scholarships that year and helped 200 women find employment. When I started this foundation, I did it because I wanted to turn my pain into purpose, she said. I wanted other women to know that their struggles don't define them, their resilience does. That their past doesn't determine their future, their choices do. She paused, looking out at the audience. This year, I want to introduce someone special. Someone who's been on his own journey of transformation. Someone who's learned that real strength isn't about control or pride, it's about humility, growth, and showing up every single day. My husband, Obinna Okafor. Obinna joined her on stage, and there was respectful applause. They'd remarried quietly 3 months ago, after a year of intensive counseling, in a small ceremony with only their closest friends. This was the first public event where she'd referred to him as her husband. I don't deserve to be standing here, Obinna said into the microphone. But Chidinma has taught me that none of us deserve grace, we receive it through our willingness to change. 2 years ago, I was a man who threw away everything precious because I was too proud to see the truth. Today, I'm a man who understands that marriage isn't about ownership, it's about partnership. That being a husband isn't about being served, it's about serving. He turned to Chidinma. My wife is my hero. Not because she took me back, but because she never lost herself. She turned her worst nightmare into a mission to help others. And I get to watch her do that every single day. The audience erupted in applause. Chidinma took Obinna's hand, and together they looked out at the crowd, at Mrs. Adebayo in the front row, beaming with pride, at Pastor Emeka and his wife, at the scholarship recipients, at the donors and volunteers who'd made everything possible. Later that night, back at their new home in Ikoyi, Chidinma had refused to return to the Lekki house. They checked on Adana. The little girl was fast asleep, clutching her favorite teddy bear. She's perfect, Obinna whispered. She is, Chidinma agreed. And she'll grow up knowing that her parents fought for their family. That they didn't let one terrible night define them forever. Do you ever regret giving me another chance? Chidinma thought about it honestly. Sometimes I wonder what my life would have been like if I'd just moved on completely. But then I look at you, the man you've become, not the man you were, and I think maybe some things are worth fighting for. But Obinna. Yes. This only works because you did the work. Because you changed not to get me back, but because you realized you needed to change for yourself. That's the difference. I know. And I'll never stop doing the work. I promise you that. They stood together in their daughter's doorway, watching her sleep, and Chidinma felt something she hadn't felt in 2 years, peace. The storm had been terrible. The betrayal had been crushing. The journey back had been long and difficult. But here, in this moment, with her daughter safe and her husband transformed and her foundation thriving, Chidinma understood something profound. Redemption wasn't about going back to who you were before the trauma. It was about becoming someone stronger, wiser, more compassionate. She'd been thrown out in a storm. But the next morning, her destiny hadn't just arrived, she'd created it herself. And that, she thought, was the most powerful redemption of all. The end. Thank you for watching. He threw his wife out in the storm with her baby, but the next morning, her destiny arrived. If this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear about resilience and second chances. Comment below, do you believe Chidinma made the right choice? What would you have done in her situation? Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss our powerful African stories of love, betrayal, and redemption. See you in the next story on K-Smart's Mythic Tales.